Thanks everyone for your time and joining us today. This has kind of been a pet project of mine for the past year or so. It's something that I really love doing, and I've never really been in the healthcare space because it's usually off limits to system integrators like myself. So I wanted to kind of share with you today this project around essentially the ability to take unstructured documents, specifically in a healthcare space. And this is all integrated into our Vital Chart application and how we basically use our self-hosted models to extract 19 different fields and then automatically push that information into any EMR through our Rhapsody Envoy integration platform. So my name is Brent Wessler. If you're not familiar with me, I kind of chat or blog on different types of technology, specifically around document workflow automation. And today we're going to be talking about our release of information. Now, this tool that we have is essentially applicable to any healthcare medical record. So we're going to be talking strictly around release of information and patient charts. And patient charts is part of the medical record. So if you're not familiar with the process, as I wasn't, it basically there's two pieces to the puzzle from our side, which is we are a third-party release of information. So we work on behalf of hospitals and medical clinics to be able to adjudicate their release of information. So whether it's an attorney or a patient looking to get their medical records, they have to request that from the hospital. So that is what we do. And essentially there's two pieces, which is the ROI, release of information, document and intake process. This is going to tell us the patient, what the healthcare facility is, who's requesting the medical records. And then there's the second piece, which is we need to get that into essentially query the EMR specific to that healthcare facility and then download the chart documents, whatever the date range is for those chart documents. So Brent says, hey, I need my chart documents from this date to that date. Our team goes in, logs into the EMR, downloads the documents, right? And then adds them to our Vital Chart application. So I'm going to kind of show you, I'll just say the old way of doing it, not specific to just us, but to any release of information type process. And then the second piece, which I have Rhapsody on, and they're going to be presenting at the end of this, is the concept of pushing the data that we're going to extract from the release of information into the EMR to get the chart documents automatically. So that's what we're going to show today. I have a little demonstration, and then we'll do a couple PowerPoints and then jump into a demonstration. So the unique feature of our release of information process is really this synthetic labor component. I've been an IDP, intelligent document processing type consultant for quite some time. We had looked at using some off-the-shelf software, whether it was like Abby or Kofax or Image Trust. The issue is that it's too expensive. It's not isolated for PHI and PII. And, the royalty, the ongoing royalty to us was significant. So we needed a solution that fully integrated into our AWS Vital Chart application. We wanted a self-hosted model. There's obviously higher costs associated with the cloud compute and memory, but we don't have to pay per page or per token, which a lot of the commercial models require. We are able to automatically read these 19 different fields, one of them being the release type, and there's like 27 types of release types. The AI, the generative AI, we're basically using like a Quen model, which is one of the open source models, and it does an amazing job. We chose Quen because of the power consumption percentage. It has the least amount of power consumption of most of the open source models, and it's one of the highest performing. And it also gives us a good multimodal capability and the ability to read handwriting and also computer generated text. It's actually what you'll see, I think, is some really bad documents. So some of the things I can't read with the human eye. So we automatically learn from mistakes, right? So the model does a pretty good job, but what we need to do is as we're going in, the normalization of the data. So for instance, we read a healthcare facility that's on the document. Well, it might be like Austin Clinic, but in our system, it's Austin Regional Clinic. So we use the address that we try to find on the document itself to figure out what the healthcare facility is. So we'll show you that piece. The other piece is who's requesting the information, right? And that could be a lawyer's office, that could be a government entity like the Social Security Administration, it could be a patient requesting their own information. So our ability to auto learn based on who's requesting. So if we're seeing common requesters, the system can learn from that. I will say also a big piece of this is compliance, right? So if we're bringing in these documents, those documents need to be for that patient only. If that document has multiple patients in a single document, that's a compliance concern. So we're also looking at what we call a target patient. And as you can imagine, a lot of these ROIs, as you'll see, have a lot of the same information. There's multiple addresses, multiple phone numbers, multiple fax numbers, multiple names of people all over these documents. So I'm like very impressed as to how this application has worked in our testing. And ultimately, the last piece is the interoperability. While this is specific to our release of information process, our interoperability platform partner, Rhapsody Health, you need to have credibility. You can't just go and integrate with any EMR. I've tried to do that. You can't use RPA for it either. You'll lose complete credibility, and that customer healthcare facility won't want you in their system. So we've partnered with Rhapsody for that purpose. So that's the release part. The chart process is essentially we pass the ROI information, and then it downloads essentially the chart information that we need. And we created within AWS an API call directly into the Rhapsody platform. The benefit here is if you want to utilize VRC services for scanning, so a lot of our healthcare customers want to scan into the EMR versus a document management system. We can do that through the Rhapsody platform. And it can literally integrate using any methodology for healthcare integration, whether it's FHIR, HL7, a flat file, API level call, whatever it might be. But basically, the second step of that piece is making sure that when we download the chart information, that it too, every page is checked to ensure that the patient name and the date of birth on every page is consistent with the ROI ID that we initially generate. And so we know we sent Brent Wessler release into the EMR, and we need Brent Wessler and my birth date to be exactly on every page of that document. So we're using AI from a compliance perspective to ensure that there aren't any HIPAA violations of any kind. So this is not only for labor avoidance, which is a big piece of it because we employ a lot of people keying data, but it's also the compliance portion of that. So from an AWS architecture, without getting too technical, but being too technical, which is typical for me, this is kind of a very elaborate look and feel. So what we've done is we've implemented this infrastructure as code within AWS using SageMaker, Lambda, DynamoDB, and the various AWS components. The benefit for us is if we need to isolate and a specific healthcare customer wants their own isolated AI, we can do that. It's just a kind of copy and paste, and now we have a separate website for that customer. So we've made it very extensible. Basically what happens is, I'm going to show you this example. We use our Vital Chart application. This is something that VRC created. This is what's tracking all of our release of information and our charting documents, giving statuses and such. So we needed a solution that kind of bidirectionally integrated with that, and that's what we've kind of created here. So We worked with an AWS partner to kind of put this into place. And essentially, it's an end-to-end asynchronous flow. And then we get a response back from Rhapsody saying, hey, we got your release of information. Here's the chart documents. And as you'll see in the next slide, it's it's a very manual process. So let's take a look at the old way of how, release of information companies typically process documents. So there's lots of double data entry. As you can imagine, we have to key from image. So they have to bring open the ROI, and this is usually a PDF or JPEG or TIFF file, and they have to key from image. So they're going to, zoom in, and they're keying in manually these 19 different fields. So as you can imagine, high probability for human mistakes. The human eye is looking at every page and making sure that patient name and date of birth are consistent through all the pages. Some of these pages are 20 or more pages long. There's also multiple steps in uploading documents and downloading documents. So a lot of that, a lot of these documents are illegible. You can't even read some of these things. It's very labor intensive. We just keep throwing labor at the process. And this is something that, while it is unstructured, is very solvable. No heads up validation. So again, the user is keying from image. They're not getting validated that, hey, that can't be the same as that. That's not a valid, healthcare facility, all that kind of stuff. And as you notice, we're also able to do things like multi-patient. So there's a flag element in our UI that we've developed that can essentially notify us that there might be multiple patients on a single document. So let's take a look at the old way. And as you can see where the little person is, there's lots of human intervention here. So typically the way we do it is we get the release of information, whether that's faxed to us, scanned to us, sent in an email, whatever. We drag that into the interface. And then somebody needs to key the 19 different fields. And again, they're keying from image, which creates lots of possible issues, right? Is that Kieran, Kellen? Is that an L, an I? A lot of that can't be figured out. We validate. Somebody has to manually look at every page. We validate that. And then the Vital Chart application will assign, essentially, within a queue, that release information. And then somebody will then log into that healthcare facility's EMR and manually essentially enter some of that released information so that they can then download the chart documents for that patient. They then need to verify every page, that the patient name and date of birth on each. And then they need to open up the release of information section, put in the ROID, and then drag in the chart items. So that's the end-to-end process. And as you can see, lots of people in that process. So the new way, so what were some of the challenges when we looked at this? One, it addresses both the release, the front end piece, and the back end chart piece. It does get smarter as it goes. We've reduced a significant amount of people. We're looking at well over $1 million a year in savings. We're looking at a 79 to 80+% processing times. So it was taking us about 2 minutes to do it. We're like, under 30 seconds. We're finding out of the 19 different fields, if we're just counting fields and how many fields it got right and wrong, we're at around 94% accuracy. And I'm not saying characters, I'm talking about fields. Did it get the field right or wrong? That's how I'm kind of adjudicating the accuracy. The flow is also all asynchronous. So where you'll see in the next slide how we've done this, it's a much quicker process, and there's less humans involved in that process. And then we're able to really focus everybody's the human kind of eye on that adjudication and those validation rules, which you'll see. And then again, we use this multi-patient quality assurance. So we figure out who the target patient is based on the context. So the hardest thing about what we're doing is context. As I mentioned, LLMs are great there's no key value pairs. It's not like invoice number and then here's your invoice, and there's no labels anywhere. So we have to give it context. So you'll see we've created essentially a prompt configurator per release type to be able to put certain terms in there. So if it's an attorney's release, we know we're probably going to get requested from a, Esquire, PC, or typical attorney names versus something that is, a workers' comp. We might be seeing something like Illinois Department of Labor or something to that effect. So the challenges mostly were completely unstructured. We don't know what we're going to get. No clue. And the context is very difficult. So as you see, there's going to be like 10 different fax numbers in. Well, which one do we use, right? Same with emails and physical addresses, individual names, etc. So that was really hard. And I tell you, we kind of created this prompt builder, which feeds the SageMaker Quen model. So when we read a document, we say, oh, it's an attorney's release. It then looks at the prompt specific to that attorney release. So let's take a look at the new way. So the new way is quite a bit more simplified, right? So essentially the ROI gets dragged in. We're going to do that today. It goes to our, without getting too technical here, it goes into an S3 bucket and then gets picked up and then gets processed into our AI doc processing interface. Think about it as like a document batch manager, okay? It then auto validates everything. Somebody QCs it, they have to approve it and validate the fields. And then if it's approved, it sends it into the Rhapsody through an AWS API call. Part of that is the ROID stays with it. The healthcare facility ID, Rhapsody knows based on the ID what EMR integration, I forget what they call it, but in their IDE, they have a way to identify the different connections we have into the different EMRs. Now, while we're really focused on the release of information, if you want to scan documents in, we have another use case where we're using the same tool. Doctor's offices get faxes. They want to know if they have PHI information. We have companies that want to redact certain PHI information. All those different variations off of this can be done in this one tool. But ultimately, Rhapsody is really brokering the EMR integration, and we call that, EMR interoperability. And we partnered with Rhapsody because they have the credibility. Basically, trying to work with EMRs and hospitals to allow them to wrap a VPN around and give us access to that is a long process, and one where you just can't be like, hey, I'm just going to use a robot here, and they'll be like, no, you're not doing that. So our process has been increasingly automated using these tool sets, all kind of daisy chained together. But all of it's all in AWS and it's all API driven, so it's really clean and very cost effective. Very cost effective. All right, so let me. I'm just going to stop there. I'm going to do a quick demonstration. Certainly, if you have questions. Love to take that offline with you. If you have questions that I can answer now, certainly throw those in the Q&A area. This is our Vital Chart application. You'll see we have all of our facilities up here, but basically to intake a facility ROI, we're going to come in here and I'm going to select our auto ingestion. This allows us to basically automate the intake process. So you can drag in as many documents as you want. We could also scan into an S3 bucket. Amazon S3 bucket is kind of like, think about, probably a bad example, but like a OneDrive folder, right? It's in the cloud. It's essentially a bucket where you can dump objects into. All right, so for here, we're just going to grab I'm just going to grab and this is all fake, so don't worry, this is all fake stuff. So I just drag that into the interface here. Oops, and I do that. I upload file, and this is now going to dump it into our AI processing. So now we go to our AI processing, which is in our drop down here. And this is our QC module, essentially. Oops. That's our QC module that allows us to validate a lot of this information. So this is something we custom configured. So it is roles based. It uses AWS Cognito to be able to authenticate. Here's our prompt configurator. This allows us to pull in records that we've processed based on the release type, and you can see each release type and the different prompts we can add, and you can edit the prompts. So there's a start prompt that tells the model, in this case the Quen model, exactly what to do. It then gives the specific extraction instructions for the three elements. So it's the healthcare facility, the requester, and the patient information. So there's three kind of blocks of data we're trying to extract. And this does a really good job. It gives us the granularity we need, and it's almost immediate. So when we change it, it's almost immediate. So it updates our infrastructure as code, our files there, and updates the prompt so that it can learn from that. And as you can see, each one of them, each of the different kinds of types can be augmented. So on a patient directive, where it's getting certain facts, information, you can see now we work with our AWS partner along with PromptFoo. If you're not familiar, prompt engineering is a big thing now. It's very hard to figure out. I'm like, how hard is it to ask a question? It's hard. It's hard. All right. So that's kind of the admin side and the setup. But then, essentially of these queues, so you'll see our ROI section and our chart document section. So the chart is the second part where it comes in through Rhapsody and then validates to ensure that every page has the same patient and date of birth. But if we open up our first one here, we OCR the data. You'll notice, again, these are all fake. So this isn't PHI data. You'll notice it's a single patient. At the top here, we're validating our Vital Chart database. So we know our customers and what healthcare facilities we have. So is able to essentially resolve regional medical center to regional medical center, right? So it used the address information to then look that up. The requester information is not in any database, so we're guessing. And it's all about context. So we've told on attorney releases, always look in the letterhead at the top for most of the information. As you can see here, and it got the name right. Where's the fax number? 323. It got the fax number right. The date received, 12/1, which it got that right. It got the 17 Executive Park. It got that right. And then it's got an email address here. So some of these you'll see. At the top. It was at the top. Yeah. So you'll notice that there's N Vicino. Sometimes it's hard to know where. Oh, it's down here. Okay. So that looks right. I got that email. So that looks good. And then we know this is an attorney's release. So these are all the release types that we have that we automatically look at. We've made it kind of very easy to select. So if you do just type ahead, you have attorney, and then an enter selects that. So it's very keyboard centric. You could always download the document, zoom in, zoom out. You got full text OCR on the document, so you can copy and paste. But you can see it's Ortavius Brown, date of birth, date received, and then you'll notice all the healthcare facilities. So when we're done, we just hit the approve button, and that dumps it into the Vital Chart application along with the PDF document. So I just hit approve there. And now that will process directly in and move to my next document. So this is a good example of where the requester information will learn. So you could see here down in this area is where we want to see it. It actually did seem to get that. So you could see when what I'm typing in, it will remember previous entries. Okay, so you'll notice here if I start typing, it shows previous entries. So the nice part is you'll notice it did automatically select it, because when we're extracting, in this case, this Covidity 1000, it's going to our table. We have an alias table. Make sure that that particular value is still there. So we check the alias table first of any adjudicated release of informations, and then we try to just, if it's not there, we just try to read what we can off of the document itself. But in this case, you'll see a COVID 1000. It has the right facts. So again, look how many different numbers there are. There's a number. Oh, here's a secure fax. So it did get the secure fax. But again, look how many phone numbers there are, just on one document. And that's a lot of, here's another fax number. How does it know that that's not the fact? It's all about context. And the prompts and the generative AI is so smart that it can understand where to extract that information from, even if they're all so much different. Okay, so this one, it didn't get the site right. So we have to come in and we have to say, you know, what is this now? Again, because this is a fake document, it doesn't show up. We don't have a care point. But as you notice, when they start typing, it's going to give us all of our healthcare facilities that we do have within the core product. All right, so some other things. We have the ability to also, this is Alyssa. You can see here it didn't get the date received because we always want it. This isn't really the date received. We want the fax header line. We usually look in that area. You'll notice at the bottom, we have the ability to reject it. If we reject it, it goes into reject queue. Somebody can then look after it. We have the ability to restart processing if we want to like make a change to the prompt and restart from the beginning. In certain cases, we might have a multi-patient. So we want to delete the document. We first want to download the document, parse the document manually in a PDF, and then delete the document, right? So in situations like that, you'll see you have this multi-tag. So multi will show up. This allows us to know that it is a multi-patient, and that might be a false positive. So you do have the ability to uncheck that piece if you need to. And then you can scroll down and you can see that you'd have to check every page to see, in this case, this person has a very long name. And as a result of the long name, it probably got one of those characters wrong. That is a tough name there. So that's essentially our ability to create the ROI. That then comes into our intake process. So we can go in and then search for records. So I'm going to look for one of the records I processed, Nate, and you could see it brings all of the data automatically over into the chart application along with the physical document itself. So somebody doesn't have to key in any of this information. Otherwise, they would. I mean, there's 19 different fields that they have to enter. And a lot of that, as you can see, is handwritten, so it's hard to understand. So we're finding like 80% faster throughput versus manual keying. And, you know, some of these documents are the worst documents I've ever seen. I'm trying to find something that one of the documents was just terrible. In any case, once that's done in our system, we just hit, you know, it goes to a queue and somebody now manually keys it versus essentially now when it hits the proposed state or the future state is as soon as it hits here, we have an API call to Rhapsody. And we pass all this information and Rhapsody brings back the chart documents. So those are the, you know, the service request dates that they want. And then we go to our chart documents area. And this is where we're going to need to QC. So we'll come to this one, for instance. It's a very simplistic interface, but you'll notice that it looks and it makes sure that Octavius Brown and this date are on every page and that there are no other documents there. And then all they need to do is hit approve on that. If it is not a valid one, you'll notice, and again, this just kind of test data, it will throw an error. and then it will raise the issue, whether it's missing a document, patient, whether it's physically missing the patient information or if it's just wrong. So I'll get one of these 4 issue statements, and then somebody would have to manually adjudicate it. So this takes care of the second half, which is now we're storing the medical record. We need to make sure that that medical record is only for Joe Bailey, not for Ortavius Brown. So we're using the Quen and the AWS SageMaker process for all of this. And then essentially we hand it off to Rhapsody. So to kind of just quickly introduce Rhapsody, before I let them kind of jump into a quick demonstration. Again, the reason we chose Rhapsody, we went to the market. They have 68% market share within Epic. A lot of our customers, our current customers, use Rhapsody. It's one of the better pricing models. But if you think about our process, we're throwing labor at this problem, which is a data entry, mostly a data entry and compliance issue. If you have large amounts of documents, you have very secure PHI information, and you have a very error-prone, labor-intensive process, it makes total sense to utilize something like Rhapsody for the interoperability. Yes, I went to the market. I evaluated probably 20 different vendors, and there are a ton of offshore developers that will claim to be able to integrate with Epic and Cerner and any of the other applications. But the reality is great. And once you introduce your offshore partner to a hospital, they're probably not going to be too psyched about that. So Rhapsody's out of Boston. They're a known entity, and, we love working with them. So I'll hand that off. Is it Mike? You want to jump in on that, or?
Sure. Thanks, Brent.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone. I am Mike Gellert, the Healthcare Sales Director at Rhapsody. Been here about 5 years, but I've been in interoperability about 20. So some of you on the call might know me, but yeah, to Brent's part, we've been supporting the Vital Chart workflow and the AI workflow, and how we've been doing this, right? The goal is to speed up the digital health innovation of these EMR integrations. And next slide. So just from a level set. So some of you might actually be on this call that are Rhapsody customers. So if you're not familiar with us, we've been in the market for about 40 years, best in class for the last 16. We are a global company. So if you are on this call from a different country, we can support the VRC integrations based on ISO 27001, GDPR rules and regs, 1,700 customers. When we're deploying the Envoy iPaaS solution on behalf of VRC, it is in a secure environment and also an AWS partner. Next slide. So we really make this a scalable process, and we meet the health system where they're at, right? If they're Epic, it doesn't just have to be Epic. It could be an Oracle, it could be a Meditech, it could be any EMR. We meet them where they're at, and based on the ROI workflow. For instance, some of the initial integration projects with the Envoy integration platform as a service offering have been with APIs. So we've been extracting the data, from a simplistic standpoint. If it's a API, it could be HL7, it could be simply in CSV. It's not the ideal, right? Because we want to make this automated, but we're really doing this from one connectivity, connection to Vital Chart and to whoever they're partnering with. On the upper half, we're making it repeatable, one to many. Next. And which this gives to Vital, right? It gives more value added to the individuals that are on this call. Also, time to value, right? This ROI process of retrieving this information is laborious, where Brent shared the initial process was throwing bodies at it. Now we're making it automated, which now you're having time to value, which I'm not going to be an expert, but I would imagine the time to value of collecting this money is an urgency from the health system side, and also from the legality side, or retrieving this data and these dollars. So the Envoy iPaaS really scales it between all different partners in one to many scenarios. Next. So when we deploy these integration projects on behalf of Vital, right? As you see, Vital is on the call. They have a project manager, but when we do these integrations, we bring a whole Rhapsody team. We are leveraging behind the scenes Rhapsody integration engine with the Envoy iPaaS as a service, a fully managed service offering where we align the data for the EMR's protocol specs. For some of you that know Rhapsody, right, there's 40 different protocols, very common in the market. Everyone wants to get data via API, FHIR, bulk FHIR, HL7. And when we support these integrations, it's really a full project team working in tandem with Vital and also the health system. We allocate a project manager, an engineer, 24/7 support, and connecting to Vital one time. And then on the right-hand side, right, number 2, whoever the end user is. It's a provider, the end user site, and it could be a small, medium, large, whoever VRC is partnering with. Next. I'll wrap up here, and then I'll hand it over to Caitlin to give a short, high-level demo of how we're accomplishing these integrations on behalf of Vital. So for what we're talking about here is the integration platform, but for others, if you're not aware, right, we have a complete digital health enablement platform from anything from moving images, right, even from your side, Brent, if you had to ingest documents to support the ROI workflow, we could pull those in with Rhapsody. There's terminology solutions or identity solutions, and supporting this through really the digital health enablement platform between vendors or also health systems. And
I think you also support like X-rays. Like I got a question from one of our sales. They wanted to scan in all their X-rays.
Yeah.
I assume like through a DICOM image or something like that. You can do those types of things as well, right?
100%. So native to the integration engine supports DICOM workflows. If you have more of a robust workflow where you're moving large images, routing them through a radiology practice or an AI platform now, right? You can tag, you can fetch out of the DICOM images or the headers, and we can move that through our image director. But on the first step, Brent, if there's a partner or an organization that wants to move DICOM, 100%, we can move that through the Envoy iPaaS or the integration engine.
Perfect. Caitlin, did you want to share your screen?
Sure, I will do that now. Yep, and hi everyone, I'm Caitlin Formal. I'm a solution consultant here at Rhapsody. Like Mike said, our Rhapsody Envoy iPaaS solution is powered by our best-in-class integration tooling. We can deploy fully in the cloud. When we deploy our Envoy iPaaS, it's going to be in our AWS private cloud, but it can also be managed via our Envoy Edge in your own cloud or your own architecture, if that's what your organization's requirements are. The back-end configuration for connectivity, routing, validation, and transformation is all handled by our team using that tooling. And this allows for easy automation and quick interface development through we use reusable configurations, pre-built templates, and that we see for common integration patterns and EMR connectivity. Because it's purpose-built for healthcare, the features allow us to recognize and adapt to variants that always rise when we're working with healthcare data, because I think we all know that healthcare data is never really consistent. So this is a glimpse of a simplified workflow or interface route that our teams would build behind the scenes. It reflects the integration patterns that Mike described. So a vendor needs to consume data via a proprietary API, but the different providers are serving it up via different payloads and protocols. So in this case, CCDA, which is EBXML over an API, HL7 over real-time TCP, or another provider can only provide it via a CSV file. We manage both the connectivity to the providing systems and, of course, the vendor API through what we call communication points in Rhapsody. So we have an extensive library, as Mike said, of the common protocols that you see in healthcare, and this allows us to connect to any EMR or system out there. There has not been a system that I've encountered that we have not been able to connect to. And of course, we have also pre-built templates for things that you're going to see commonly amongst your own integrations. And this allows us to deploy interfaces very quickly. So additionally, in addition to the connectivity, we also manage the different mapping. And we do these mappings and transformations and things that we need to do to this healthcare data through these filters that you see on the right. So it doesn't matter how the data is being served up. We can always normalize it, validate it, and handle it as you need. You can see for this workflow, when I'm receiving that CDA, I need to map that into, in this case, a JSON payload. And I'm showing you this in a test harness. So I can easily show that I can map that EBXML to a FHIR JSON payload. But these inputs and outputs can be anything. You can see in the next example here, I'm able to map that HL7 to that same JSON so it can be normalized. We also have additional tools for things that we see in healthcare a lot. We need to detect duplicate messages. We need to validate that a message conforms and has the required fields before I send it on. Or maybe I need to debatch a large file into individual messages. So I can start with a multi-line message. Of course, this is all sample data, and debatch that into individual messages so I can process them individually. This isn't just for batch files. That could be for large files in any format.
So I think, Caitlin, that's a great point. So like we have a lot of customers that can't create HL7 or that X12835 or 837 if you're a patient billing, or HCFA's CMS forms. Rhapsody can convert, right? One data format to another.
Exactly.
Is also a big piece to that puzzle. So if anybody's on the phone that's looking to basically push HL7 or healthcare compliant data, this tool will take any format and then convert it to what you need it to be. So above and beyond just the integration, it can also transform the data. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Do the transformation, and the routing, and through this extensive tool set, again, it can we can do these things really quickly and make it very reusable. So remember, our teams will be managing this behind the scenes. We do have customers that do self-deploy if this is something that your teams would want to manage. But we see, these days, a lot of our vendors would like us to manage this for them because we're the experts in it. So it would be managed behind the scenes, but Envoy users will still have access to our web-based management console. And this is where they can get insight into what's going on with those integrations. So I can take a quick peek at, what data has flown from that HL7 input provider. I can, take action on the data. Maybe I need to resend it or I need to download to inspect it. Of course, all of this is driven by user-based and role-based access. So I should mention that we can also restrict pieces of the configuration. Looks like I actually got an error here, so we can manage our errors and replay those through. Any faults that happen to messages are going to be the responsibility of our teams to manage or notify you. But we like to, just because that we're, it's a black box that we deploy and we can do those configurations, but our customers like to be involved, and it's your data, so we want to make sure that you guys have the insight to track that. So a user can follow everything that's going on from a message. You can see that I received the EBXML. You can do a compare for any step and see how it's been transformed. We can even view if it's received a successful response. We can track those responses. We can do different reporting based on the data that's going through the engine, and your users will have access. Also, yeah, and you can also set up proactive alerting, for events that you want to be notified for. So maybe like if you haven't received messages in a certain amount of time, or a connectivity to a certain system is down, we can make sure that your users are proactively notified so they can take action. Even though it's our team's responsibility to manage those, ultimately we're working on behalf of your clients, and so we need to make sure we provide you as much visibility as possible. So that I will pass it back to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so if there's any questions, feel free to, can you raise your hand? Yes, raise your hand and we will unmute you. Otherwise, just type into the Q&A section. But again, a lot of people don't ask questions. So I would just say if you want to talk about your particular use case, or you have an opportunity within your organization or one of your partner organizations, feel free to reach out to me, and I can have a consultative kind of discussion with you. But thanks everybody for attending today. Please look out for a LinkedIn post that we're going to cut up some of this video and post it on some of the cool things that we can do. So any type of healthcare AI extraction, as well as pushing that data bidirectionally in any EMR, that's what you just saw today, and that's what we're all about. And if we can work with you, let us know. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks.